This is E&P Reports from Editor and Publisher Magazine, the authoritative voice of news media since 1884, serving newspapers, broadcasts, digital, and all multimedia news publishing. And welcome once again, Mike DeLuca, publisher of E&P Magazine. Quick housekeeping. Listening to me on whatever flavor of podcast channel you love, please follow us. Watching us on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button below the screen, smash the bell directly to the right. You'll get an update each and every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports. I'm bringing back old friends now. And, you know, as if you're a regular viewer and listener to E&P Reports, we're staying in New England 2 weeks in a row. We just talked to Boston.com and how the Boston Globe has done its expansion into Rhode Island. Now we're going to go a bit south of there and go back to old friends from Connecticut. Mike DeLuca, group publisher and president of Hearst Connecticut Media Group. Mike, do you call that HCMG for short? What is the...
We do, and there's much debate as to whether that's the right way to talk about our business. But yeah, HCMG is the way to go right now. And
you are head of all Hearst operations in Connecticut. What city are you based out of, Mike? I mean, are you all over now with offices, or where's the home office for you?
So we have seven locations across Connecticut. I would say our main two are the Norwalk, Connecticut, as well as the New Haven Register, or New Haven, where the Register is. And so those are our two main, and then we've got satellites, and we want to be in a lot of the communities that we serve, and it's important to us to have that shingle. So that's why we maintain presence as well.
The other member of our group this morning is one of my, I'm going to throw a lot of compliments at her because I've made her a star at a lot of conferences. I've been playing a segment from a year ago when I interviewed Wendy Metcalfe, VP of Content and Editor-in-Chief at HCMG. Wendy, I keep playing a segment of you over and over again because you're one of the people that I guess I just feel close to, because you and I have kind of a similar philosophy in a way about how to build audience. Because when you came on the program, you surprised me by saying, because I actually teased you, I said, so are you a nerd? Do you like all this digital stuff? And your exact words were, oh, I drink it in. But the truth is, you don't mind looking at data, I hope I'm saying this correctly, in order to craft where your journalistic energy is going. Do I have that right? Did I say that in like a 35,000 foot way?
Yeah, I think that using data can really empower decision making in the newsroom. But of course, the journalism is pristine. You know, I think that it can inform and really deepen your journalism and serve your reader better.
All right, so the reason we're getting together is a year ago, we talked about 1,000% growth in digital subscribers. And by the way, we monitor and we're got to keep our ear to the ground at E&P. We get a lot of press. We do a lot of our own reporting. In my humble opinion, this is possibly the best subscriber growing media group right now I know. So we're going to explore audience growth and the secret sauce behind it maybe, and what's going on in Connecticut with Hearst Connecticut Media Group on the backside of this message.
This episode of E&P Reports is sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide are asking the same question. How do we accelerate the growth of consumer revenue? Traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way, costing you money. IQ Audience Plus by Town News is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers you to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Ready to supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income? Visit townnews.com/EP today to learn more about IQ Audience Plus by Town News.
All right, so Wendy, we're going to kick it off with you. A year ago, when we talked, you had just launched a new statewide product, which, believe it or not, a lot of other companies are starting to mimic you, or it was just in the air, because everybody else, a lot of successful companies are doing this. As we just mentioned, Boston.com is going more regional. We have our friends down in South Carolina we've reported on at the Post and Courier that have gone more regional. So CT Insider was brand new when we spoke. And that basically was a culmination of 24 HCMG sites, all under one moniker, doing more of a regional feel. Correct me if I'm wrong, still with hyper local content for each of the markets you serve. Is that the model today? And where are you today with ctinsider.com? If I can get an update.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks again for having us here today. We're always delighted to share, some of the positives that we're experiencing. Number one, we created the statewide site to try to better serve audiences that we might not be reaching already through our very core local sites. So both of those things are very important to us. But we got the sense that the audience was really interested in powerful statewide journalism. To give you an example of that, it could be during COVID. What are the rules that the governor might be coming out with that particular day? And then to break it down further, we might divide it across more than 160 different municipalities to further that local reporting. One important thing I would say is that statewide journalism is not at the expense of local. They supplement and complement each other. So both of those things in tandem seem to be the perfect recipe to relate to our audience. So our goal is to have quality journalism that is relatable and it's recent. We have a frequency to it as well. So that's one part. The second part, Mike, is that I'm pleased to report that it's been growing really well, so much so that we've invested further. So we've added further newsroom investment in both the statewide piece, and now we've also expanded to further our content in the greater Hartford area. This is now going to bring us close to 100,000 subscribers in print and digital. And I'm pleased to tell you that we are just dozens away from breaking 40,000 digital subscriptions in the coming days.
Well, because a year ago, you said the goal was 100,000 and you were going to do it within a year. It looks like you're just going to, that's amazing. Mike, she's spending your money. You're the guy that has to do the P&Ls, right? And report to the bosses at Hearst. Is this investment working? Are you seeing, to other people that are slashing and burning, you and I both know that's happening in the industry now. Mm-hmm. God forbid, because you and I are both old ad guys, slash sales, but they also slash editorial. And then is it working to put this investment into growth? Are you seeing it on the bottom line, Mike?
Yeah, hands down, it's working, Mike. This has been simple. And I think we've been consistent with this in the last couple of years. There's two ways that you can grow your bottom line. You can do that through slashing. Yes. Which we're seeing throughout the industry, or you can do that through investment. And the investment does take a little bit longer. We know that. We're not blind to that. However, we're into newspapers 2.0 at this point. We're not trying to figure out how to make the old model work. We are making a new model work, but we are having tremendous respect for what the old model was, because those print subscribers are still really, really important to us. It's important. It's a segment that is a captive audience on the advertising side for certain, and then on the journalism side, just the ability to reach these people and let them know what's going on. Some of our elderly readers aren't on the web. They need to know where to go for their news and information. They need to understand what's going on in their community, and they're still going to the newspaper for that. So, long-winded answer to your question, it's working in that we are hitting the metrics that we need to in order to see through our long-term plan. Does that take a little bit longer? Absolutely. But this is about an investment into the future, not about what we're going to be doing in the next, what our next projection is for, the month of July.
Wendy, I'm going to ask you to wait in the background for a second, because I'm going to stay with Mike and stay on he said a very interesting word during that response. Some would say a dirty word. He said the word newspaper. Which, Mike, some associations have dropped that from their title. Yeah. I've been at 11 different conventions now, and some states no longer call themselves newspaper associations. We're news media. Mm-hmm. I proudly say that E&P is a magazine, which it's not all my audience. But I have it in my subject lines. I have it everywhere, because to me, it's a differentiator. I don't mind saying that I still publish in print. Sure. How much of your audience, when you do the branding, knows? Do you say that word proudly still in the industry, newspaper, as you establish this brand statewide, Mike?
We are extremely proud of the word newspaper. And Mike, I know that you know the history of Hearst, but Hearst was built on the back of the newspapers. And that's something that has tremendous respect today throughout the Hearst Corporation as to, where we came from in those roots, and the importance of the First Amendment and the importance of making sure that, we're standing up for the people who can't stand up for themselves, and all of the wonderful things that journalism does. In terms of the brand, CT Insider is not a newspaper brand. CT Insider is a website and a news site. But that doesn't take away from the other parts of our business that are newspapers. And we brand ourselves. We take pride in what we do on the newspaper side. But it's really, I don't think it has to be one or the other, Mike. I think it's the solution we're providing to readers, and whichever format they want to read, at least for now, we're going to provide whatever that platform is most comfortable to that reader.
The mastheads then still survive in the brand? You have a lot of local mastheads that have a few hundred-year, well, maybe not a few hundred, but over 100-year heritage, right? That you're still maintaining in your total brand. Yeah. Are they still loud? Well, when did you nod in your head? Are they still loud and proud in how you present your product, even digitally?
Absolutely.
Do you still?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a core part of our growth. CT Insider is new. It was the core markets that actually got us moving. So, a credit to them. And also the other exciting piece is that our churn remains really positive. The reader loyalty is strong, and that goes with the print product as well as digital. Obviously, with print, to Mike's point, it's a changing landscape, but we serve readers where they are. So whether it's print, whether it's social, you want to consume us, newsletters, we've launched all of these things to make sure that we're getting you via the app, via digital, via print. We even have a magazine as well with Connecticut Magazine. So, I think that being strong on all of those platforms has been pretty integral to our success.
All right, let's talk about one of the things you said, newsletters. I'm all in on email. My email list is my most important asset, I would say. And that was the first thing I did when I did my due diligence on E&P. I tell this story sometimes. I had people advising me to shut the print product down. Just get rid of it. Just blog. You'll save money. But I kept the print product, but I focused on building the database first. You guys are pretty good at that, aren't you? I mean, your email now statewide must be huge. I don't know. I know that you guys don't like to share exact numbers, but is that a core product of yours now? And how valuable is that list? And I got to ask this, Wendy, how valuable will that be in the future, especially as we start looking at changes in wherever Google's going with their data, and cookies and all that kind of stuff? Where are you at on how you monetize or use that email database, Wendy?
Yeah, I mean, email newsletters, they're central to our strategy, and that can be in two ways. It can be, in furthering the engagement of a reader. It can be growing acquisition. So that's the one piece. The second piece being the loyalty, making sure that they stay with us, that we're communicating with them. More and more, I find in our busy lives, people want a one-stop shop to find everything that they're looking for. So there's a little bit of everything. And if you are, for example, a Greenwich Time reader, you can come in and read what's happening locally, but we also give you a flavor of what's happening around the state. We might take you into sports. We have like the most robust statewide local sports website, things like that. So it allows us to deepen their experience by aggregating what we have that we think is most relevant to them.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds when it comes to data. One of the things that I loved about our interview a year ago is I asked you this question where I said, so are you a nerd? Do you get into all this geeky, nerdy stuff? Because a lot of editors that I will talk to try to avoid that. They think it will influence them in the wrong direction. Mike, you know that. I mean, you're nodding your head too at those of you that are watching the video, because they will keeps thinking, well, my job is just to tell you the news that you need to know. But if you go too far into the data, then you're not doing your job sometimes of investigative reporting or the true power of a local journalistic entity. So I asked you back then, and you said, oh, you love it. You devour it. So back a year ago, you said that every morning in your inbox, Wendy, you got a special email from the digital team showing you everything. I mean, this thing, and they boil it down so you can see the previous day's engagement. Is that still the case? Is that what you look at every morning when you start your day?
Yep. Every morning, every day, every night, you name it. And I think it goes back to something you said earlier. We are listening to our readers. We're listening to them in a way we couldn't before. I think back to a couple decades ago when I started in this business, it would have to be a letter to the editor or a phone call or an email to really understand what the reader was thinking or feeling. Otherwise, we were, to your point, making a judgment call. The other important thing is, as an editor-in-chief, I hope to invoke the trust of my newsroom that I'm going to make the right judgment. I'm not going to let data dictate what we do and take us in the wrong direction. I'm going to look to data to listen to the reader, to inform the choices we're making, sometimes surprise us, and just really try to help deepen the experience and the thought process. A big part of it's the idea generation that comes from it. So yes, in the morning, we have, in addition to checking ourselves what's going on, we have an analysis that gets sent out to better prep us for the morning news meeting, which starts with an audience discussion. Here's what our readers care about this morning. And sometimes it can look into subscriptions. Sometimes it will look into the amount of visits something's getting. It might look into how newsletters are going. I'll give you another interesting thing that we added recently. What's trending on Google? So last week, we were knee deep into a lot of serious news. And we got to the end of the week and our head of audience and team start talking through Google Trends. And they said, hey, everybody's actually Googling the name of this high school or things to do this weekend. And we didn't know about that. You know, it was like, oh, they're not talking about what we think they would be talking about. They surprised us. And so it just starts a conversation. You know, why are people Googling that? Do we think it's something that they would want to know? That's one type of surprise. You know, the second is when you see high interest in something, it could point you to an investigation or what have you. It's just a really good thing to be empowered by information like that at your fingertips.
Mike, Wendy has a background that is slightly different than most from the editorial side has. And the reason I'm posing you this question is Wendy was your hire, correct? You brought her into the company. And you brought her into your news environment, award-winning, very respected news environment. I mean, you and I go back, Mike. I used to consult you back in the heydays of the good old days when digital was young. Her background was and Wendy, you can jump in if I got this wrong, and I do stalk you. I checked your whole, I know I'm kidding, but you started in journalism, but then moved to marketing and audience. Circulation, God forbid. I mean, you got the dark side.
Still put my reporter and editor hat on, but yes, that's right.
And then you came back. Mike, was that part of the reason why you were so enamored or said this is going to be the person that moves us forward? Was that part of that hire?
I mean, I think it certainly was. It was great to see that she had that experience and she understood that side of the business. Frankly, the reason why she's in the chair that she's in right now is she's the very best editor-in-chief, I think, anywhere in the country. And why I felt so strongly about bringing Wendy from the first minute I met her, a half an hour. I think she was on in the cab on the way back to the airport to go back to Canada, and we were texting back and forth, negotiating, her salary and everything else. And so I just knew her love of journalism, how much she cares about it, her staunch defense of journalism is admirable. And it's something I think you said, before, Mike, before we jumped on this, it's, you want somebody defending the brand. And she's on the wall and she defends her journalism and she defends the business at all costs. And that's why she's so special. And that's why, hopefully she's happy with me, but that's why I love working with her so much.
But okay, Wendy, you have that. See, and that's why I feel akin to you. I mean, you're going to leave this interview feeling good because both Mike and I are going to blow a lot of smoke.
Very kind.
Well, I started as a disc jockey, remember? And then I went into sales and radio, but that empathy I had for the content stayed with me as I was being, I was a turnaround guy. I was trying to make AM radio stations work when FM, and I would come in battling for every dollar, but I still had empathy for the product. I'm so glad I have that in my soul. Does that make sense? It also helps me with the egos in a newsroom. Oh God, I just said it. Oh, how dare that?
Not at all.
No, I mean, I've had to walk into many environments in my consulting career and sit down with editorial because I was asked to and explain that maybe this is the better strategy. And they would argue with me, we're not going to do sponsored content. I've been brought into more conference rooms. This was like 10 years ago when everything was starting to, with native, and try to give an argument to an editorial team that we still got to support journalism with advertising. You've seen both sides of the equation. First question, did you have trouble when you got into that news environment with some of the more venerable reporters saying, "What's she doing here? I mean, I know this part." Or how has it been now? As you come down from Canada, you had to respell the word color. I know that, right? I mean,
well, it doesn't help that I've lived in Britain, Canada, and the US. So the spellings have been an interesting journey. I could perhaps write a book on that. But I mean, listen, it's about trust, and it's about using data in the right way. It's about protecting newsroom standards. It's about serving the public ultimately. We are here to make life better. That is what really drives our journalism ultimately. But we also appreciate that while we look into, for example, we launched a big story this morning on red flag laws, on the backs of the shooting and what have you. Obviously, parents want to feel safe. They want us to be a watchdog for what's going on out there, diving into political conversations, looking at the data in terms of our journalistic stories. There's that piece. But at the end of the day, data can never be punitive or, used in the wrong way. So I think that as an editor-in-chief who started as a reporter, who worked as an editor, yes, I delved into marketing and understanding circulation. The whole goal was to put the reader at the center of what we're doing to better understand all ends of the process. So by example, we would understand, is it the journalism that they didn't like and why they left us? Or actually, was it just that they weren't getting the newspaper in the right spot on their driveway? And I think that's very empowering to understand that and have a deeper conversation with the reader to be better as an organization. So the one thing I would say about newsrooms, they are vocal, they are passionate, they care deeply about what they do. But if you can earn their trust and you can listen and you can earn their buy-in, then I think it's the most powerful thing you'll see. Everything will just start to come together. They'll listen to the data, they'll do great journalism, and we'll walk that really important line together. And I think it's that process that helps us go from good to great.
If I were to put you in front of a room of the geeky, nerdy data guys who are on the audience side today, there's so many people coming up on the audience side who are just watching data, but not interacting in newsrooms. In my humble opinion, that's the next thing. I mean, all this talk about advertising and editorial having to come to the center. I think the audience guys have to get into the newsroom more and share their knowledge. What advice would you say for how they approach those newsrooms without creating a chasm in our world of journalism today and the necessity of it to still be pure, unfettered, and uninfluenced by too much advertising and too much, the pure root of it. Give me that elevator pitch. Go ahead to that group.
Yeah, we can't be siloed. We are all journalists. We're all newsroom team players that need to operate as one. And if you have a team over here and a team over here, and it's not going to work. We have to bring this knowledge and power together. And furthermore, the culture of understanding around data or journalism or newsroom standards, it's something that we're trying to create throughout our newsroom. We're going to be close to 170 newsroom staff by the time the hiring is done that we're going through right now. And I don't refer to the digital team as the digital team or this newsroom. Right. We are all one. And I think that the very fact that we set our newsroom meetings off with our head of audience or an SEO expert talking us through the landscape of what the reader experience is, I think it sets a really good tone for the day. But just remember, it all comes back to quality journalism, and everybody is here to support that exact thing.
Mike, you and I both use a term a lot where I think others, and this is just my one man's opinion, you and I both use a term called brand, if you follow my logic here, sir. I never thought of E&P as a magazine when I took it over. I immediately I think of it as a brand. Mm-hmm. Where the magazine is just one of its many platforms. And I don't overthink. I've attended a lot of conferences, and if I sit through one more session on print frequency, I'm thinking that's not the problem. Do you agree with me, sir? When you're thinking of the strategy now of one of the most successful media groups I know now in building audience And that's what it all boils down. Because without audience, what are you, Mike? You're a billboard in your basement, right? You got the best journalism in the world. What does it matter if no one's reading the stuff? I mean, sure. You've built a quality audience, and it's all taken a lot of, levers that you're moving as the head of this thing. But do you think in terms of brand all the time and not get caught in the weeds? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but how much do you focus on all those little things like print frequency and this? Or where's your head at when you get up in the morning, Mike? Because I want to get your advice to other senior leaders now who are trying to mimic your model.
Sure. I mean, I wish I could just think strategically all day long and say smart things, but the reality of the job of a publisher in 2022, you are in the weeds, and it's not just frequency. It's a million other things. But we as an executive team certainly make sure that we take the time, at least weekly, to think bigger and to think about things like brand. Like we're really in an interesting situation now, Mike, because we've got CT Insider, which is now it's starting to click and it's starting to go, right? And we know that that's our future, right? And but it's how fast, how do we manage? Because remember, Connecticut is a whole bunch of different communities. This isn't Houston or San Francisco, right? And so we do wrestle with what that brand identity should be. Should it be an overall encompassing CT Insider, and then the mastheads are within that site? Or do we keep the purity of those mastheads in those communities because they've been there for so long and people are so familiar with them? So, I think it's inevitable over time we will be an umbrella and have a larger brand. I don't know that it'll be HCMG. It might be CT Insider, where we don't have to make that decision right this second. But we certainly think about this a lot. And the reason why I'm hedging a little bit is just Connecticut's just so unique, because certainly, the Gold Coast is different than New Haven, which is going to be different than Greater Hartford. And, trying to figure out, okay, how do we just call these things one is difficult, because they're really not. So the short answer I give you a long answer, but the short answer is we're figuring that out.
I love it, because that's how I get up I still don't know. I will never know the final end game on my brand.
Yeah.
But I'm always strategic. I'm going to say where my head's at. I'm always strategically looking at openings and where can I move that brand without damaging the back end.
Sure.
Because if you look me up in Wikipedia, it says I'm the Bible of the newspaper industry. But I've got 23% of my listeners, because I'm a nerd, and viewers are coming from public radio now. The public radio people that are doing, and television producers who want to learn more about, no offense, they want to take you down, Wendy. They want to learn the secrets, because we're very successful. This is the best time, I think, to be in our industry. Do you agree, Mike? This is a great time for us.
It's wonderful. It's a great opportunity for all of us.
Especially now, with the fragmentation of streaming that's hurting local broadcast. Radio with, the first thing people do now is sync their phones into their cars. This is an amazing time for local journalism to flourish, as long as we can fund our newsrooms.
Exactly.
I love what you just said, because it's fluid. That's why everybody says, this is the decision. I go, no, you don't know that. I don't know where we're going to be in a year. But it's fun to take the ride. So to both of you, I'm going to give you one final moment here. You're talking to 3,000 to 4,000 now. Senior executives in all different facets of publishing. You've got operations, you've got advertising, you've got digital management, you've got, of course, senior editorial, you've got owners, and we're talking small and large. Wendy, final takeaway to someone who's saying, I got to grow my audience. I got to fight now. Final takeaway, and you've given us so many good nuggets, but just give me one final elevator pitch on what you would advise someone who sat down with you at a convention and said, here, let me buy you a glass of wine. Give me 2 minutes of your time and tell me what I should do to be like you guys in Connecticut.
Create a culture of journalistic excellence, which is informed but not dictated by data. Put forward a case for investment in your newsroom and show that it works, so that you can spur future investment, and always be passionate.
Wow. Mike, can you add to that? You're now talking to a publisher over a cocktail who says, man, I just watched that interview. You guys are on fire. You're growing audience. You're adding people to your newsroom. How dare you? I think what you're doing, and you're making money. what is your secret, Mike, or what final advice would you give me over this glass of wine or beer or what have you?
Sure. Well, I would echo Wendy's sentiment, and I would just add, it's all about the people. We have an incredibly dynamic, thoughtful, caring, awesome group of people, and we've created a culture which I'm immensely proud of. And just all of the work and all of that stuff is great. If it doesn't start with the right people with the right attitude, then you're doomed for failure. And you got to invest in your team, invest in that culture, make sure people know as the person at the top that you care and that you're authentic and you share information freely, you communicate often. People really want to jump onto that. And then ultimately they end up running through walls for it because everybody believes in what that mission is.
There you go. Well, Wendy Metcalfe, we're going to be checking in with you again. VP of Content and Editor-in-Chief of the Hearst Connecticut Media Group. Wendy, what is your email address if someone wants to reach out to you? Do you mind sharing it?
No, I'd be happy to, or you can get me on Twitter and LinkedIn. My DMs are open, but wendy.metcalfe@hearst.com.
Mike DeLuca, Group Publisher and President. What is your email address, sir?
mdeluca@hearst.com.
You guys enjoy what I hope is a great summer up there. You must be so happy. New England, things are open. Have a few lobsters, get out, enjoy that. just enjoy yourselves. As an old New England guy myself, I wish you well. And Wendy, I didn't correct you on this one. You said process rather than process. I let you have that, but you can't say Z, you have to have Z now. Do you understand that? That's our...
I like to change it up.
There you go. Take care, guys. Stay healthy, and thanks for your valuable time.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.